everybody. Welcome back to the Grunge Bible podcast, and today is a special episode. It is April the 5th, 2021, and in the genre of grunge and grunge rock, April 5th is a very significant day for a few somber reasons and a few notable reasons. And Ethan, as you know, April 5th was the day that Kurt Cobain passed away in 1994. Additionally, it was the day that Layne Staley passed away in 2002. And then a few years later, in 2019, it was the day that Shawn Smith was discovered to have also passed away. And then going back to 1966, it's also the day that Mike McCready was born. So, I can't really think of any other days on the grunge liturgical calendar that, carry this much significance and this much weight.
Yeah, this is one of those points in history where they overlap and you get this very emotional filled day and it for sad reasons. So that's why we're taking time to kind of go back and we're going to talk about these four men, three that passed away, and try and celebrate their lives a little bit. We do that on the page often when people pass away, so we thought that this was appropriate, and we're going to do our best to kind of highlight some of the good stuff and just kind of talk about it just for a quick 20 to 25 minutes. Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
above our abilities. So.
Yeah. So starting off with Kurt, obviously, you made the good point before we hopped on to record. It's been 27 years since he passed away, and he did pass away at the age of 27. And I imagine for a lot of people listening to this, they probably remember hearing the news. I think it came out on April 8th that he had passed away. So I think a lot of people, maybe listening right now might remember where they were when they heard the news, or, maybe even remember watching MTV, the special report that we've all, seen archival footage of on YouTube. And that was a really, really tough day. And, I think with Kurt and Layne especially, everybody was very privy to the struggles that they faced, with addiction and with mental illness. And, it's really unfortunate, and it's so sad, even looking back all these years later, how it came to a head and how things happened the way that they did. But I mean, talk about Kurt Cobain, he had broken through the mainstream in 1991, and, 3 years later he was dead. So 3 years, at the forefront in the public eye, how much of an impact he had on music and on culture is really, really impressive. And, even as the years have gone by, his impact and his significance, I think, has only gotten bigger.
Yeah, I was looking at some quotes that other people had about Kurt, and Billy Corgan, he talks about how he was so influential, and he called him the Michael Jordan of their generation. And Lars Ulrich from Metallica said that, like, when you talk to Kurt, like, there was nothing between you two, the two of you. You could talk person to person, and you knew you were going to get that every single time. And I think that's one of the things that you're going to remember about Kurt, is that Kurt was an individual, and he was himself through and through, day in and day out. And I think that's why, people, as we've talked about, and we get comments that Kurt was not this, virtuoso when it comes to the guitar or singing, and he wasn't so polished, but he was himself, and that's why people loved him. That's why he gave a voice to the people that didn't have a voice, and he really was influential. And that's always going to be why I love Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, is because of the doors that they opened for the generation to follow, in the rock and roll scene, the alternative rock scene, the LGBT community, the way that Kurt will voice that. I mean, one of my favorite funny little thing I saw, like, Monk magazine asked Kurt, said, "Well, are you gay?" And Kurt was like, "If I wasn't attracted to Courtney Love, I would be bisexual, but I have Courtney, so I'm not." And I think it's funny because he's like, in a different life, I'm bisexual, and it's just cool the way that he. I mean, that was that's 27 years ago.
It was such a different time then.
Total different landscape for all the issues, especially the LGBT community, and it's
Absolutely.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and he was such an early champion for that stuff. And I think one of the most famous ones was, I think it was on the inside of the packaging for In Utero when it came out in 1993. There was a quote to the effect of, if anyone, who wants to purchase this, is racist in any way, sexist, or, in any other way discriminatory, like essentially fuck off, don't come to our shows and don't buy our records. And back in 1993, obviously the landscape for LGBTQ rights and different things like that was so different. And for someone, at that much of the forefront of the mainstream to come out and say those things is really, kind of a testament, I think, to who he was. And, seemingly, just such a good person and, principled and just honest. And going back to what you said, not being the most polished of guitar players, but I think with him, the one thing about him that I find to be the most admirable and just incredible is he had things to say and he said them exactly how he wanted to. And he was just unabashedly himself, which is always admirable and always commendable, no matter what field you're in. If you stay true to yourself and, you don't change yourself to fit other molds. And I think what you said, very inspiring for the next generation of artists and people. Generation X, I mean, Kurt Cobain is synonymous with that, and, how he represented those people and how they saw themselves in him.
I think that, what was it? Rolling Stone released the top 100 for the
yes, yeah,
three categories. Just to kind of go back, people say that he's not this or that, but Rolling Stone named him in the top 100 guitarists, top 100 singers, and songwriters. So I think that's really cool. I think that he earned his place in those areas. But I just love it. I just love that he's on those lists. I think that's great.
I agree. Ethan, do you have a favorite Kurt Cobain moment or a favorite performance or a favorite song of his?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier. I mean, I think, with Layne and Kurt, I think that two of the best things they've given to us are going to be the MTV Unplugged sessions. Mm-hmm. And, when we post the Nirvana session, I mean, people comment that they listen to it once a week. The amount of the weight that performance has in the followers and the listeners is pretty immense. And I think that's my favorite part. My favorite contribution, I guess, from Nirvana is being able to watch that performance front to back, the way that he went off stage and they were trying to bring him back and he was like, nope, that's it. Like, we're done. That was perfect.
We can't top that. Yeah.
You can't top that. The way that he finished Where Do You Sleep at Night, and the way his voice just kind of cracked. Like, everything about that was it's just beautiful. And, if I need a dose of Nirvana, I usually go back and watch that, and it affects me differently each time. So I would say that MTV Unplugged.
Yeah, absolutely. And
how about for you?
I think for me, I've spent a lot of time just kind of reading his words and reading his lyrics, but especially, it's well publicized now. The Journals book that came out, after he died, and just kind of like getting a glimpse into, a little bit of how his brain worked. I have a copy of that, and I'll find myself just, reading little blurbs of it. But I think for me, it just, sticks out as time goes on, just how seemingly introspective he was, and, that he did have a lot to say. And he was more than just this, like, 3-chord grunge masher screamer out there who was just pissed off. I think a lot of times, the media at the time painted out grunge to be just this like revolution of anger that like this young generation was, disillusioned, and any other buzzword that they wanted to use at the time. And I think like once you look a little deeper, you realize that's not what it was. That was maybe just a component of it, but there was so much more to it than just that.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And you were talking about, Layne Staley and Alice in Chains Unplugged. I mean, and Layne's another guy that, had so much to say, and he was a gifted writer. But I mean, in terms of, vocal ability, I mean, how can you get better than Layne Staley?
Yeah, it's we post covers on the page a lot, and we defend them all the time because I think everybody has a chance to pay tribute and kind of show their respects. And I really do love covers. But it's funny because when people cover Alice in Chains, in my head, I always think like, man, Layne was something else. Like the way that he could sing notes and songs, I'm always reminded how good and how special that voice is. It really is one of a kind. And yeah, it's amazing. He's one of my favorites to watch perform as well, I think, and see him sing. I really enjoy the old videos that there is of Alice in Chains or Mad Season. It's beautiful. So yeah, I think his voice is top notch.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, thinking about Layne, well, I guess a little refresher if anybody's new, but neither of us were alive during the grunge era. I was born in 1996, and Ethan, you were born in 94. So, I certainly not alive or cognizant of the genre when it was popular. But as I started to get into it, I think with Layne, he was really one of the first artists that I, was a fan of, a fan of his band, obviously, as well, that was, presenting the issues of, addiction and mental illness, right to you, just throughout pretty much all of his work. It was always present there. And that was kind of one of my first lessons and just kind of bits of understanding that addiction, mental illness, for example, those types of things, they can happen to anybody and they're hell. And obviously Layne probably had one of the most well-documented struggles, out of any musician or even public figure in the 1990s, struggling with heroin and, many different other things. But, through that and through those experiences, how he was able to articulate them in such a way that, people like us might understand it or, might be able to get some value out of his words and some comfort, is really, really special, I think.
Yeah, it's a good point. His journey was well documented, and I think a lot of the people around him, you only hear good things about Layne and his attitude towards life. I think one of our favorite pictures of Layne is something that we can't seem to find anymore, but it was him saying that he's willing to work. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was willing to work do anything he needs to make. It was like cut grass, paint, all this labor intensive stuff, and he was ready to do whatever it took to. I don't know. I just feel like his attitude was always so genuine. I guess.
Yeah. And even kind of thinking about that is just like for probably all of his adult life, just that dichotomy of being so passionate and so gifted into art. Not even just singing, he was an artist as well. And, he had done paintings and different things. And he actually largely designed the album artwork for the Mad Season record, actually. And just that dichotomy just raging between the, artistry in him and then the addiction that he grappled with and the disease that he had. Whereas, I can't imagine, to wake up and to fight that battle. But I mean, talk about some of the, just beautiful performances that he was able to give over the years. And, he had struggled for so long, and, in the midst of those struggles to come out with things like in performances like Jar of Flies and, the Mad Season album and Live at the Moor with Mad Season and Unplugged. And, even he pretty much disappeared from the public eye, in mid 96 after Alice in Chains' final tour. I think they did a short tour to open for the Kiss reunion in mid 1996. And he came back with the band in 1998 to record a couple of tracks for their Music Bank box set. And he was in, the worst of shape, and, he was still able to sing, despite, many struggles there. And, it's just, I think for me, it's just sad. It just stinks, because I think you said he would be 54 this year, and
They both would be, yeah.
That's younger than my parents, for example. And my parents are not particularly old, and just how much more life there was, and it just, it's crazy. Like, addiction and disease are tough, and they're scary, and they can take everything from you, and it stinks, and it's not fair.
Yeah, and I think that the life of a music and fame, it just shows how difficult it is. It's especially in the 90s, it was just addiction and depression was running rampant, and still today there's tons of artists that are struggling, and we lose an artist seemingly every other month to something of the sort. So it hasn't gone away. It's it is more talked about. But I think that we still need to continue to look into it and look into how we can. Like Kurt said, no one was built to be famous.
Yeah, it's like, how can you prepare for that until you're there? And I think all of those guys, had it's been pretty well publicized that they struggled with it, and certainly a lot of times the thing that you want, is also the thing that you're least prepared for. And I think there was a lot of that there, but it's exactly like what you said, that conversation's got to continue. And I think we've been, as a society, more open towards treating it, addiction and depression as diseases and not as, choices per se, or results of choices that you've made, because it's just like, we don't shame somebody for having cancer. Why should we shame somebody for struggling with addiction? And I definitely, totally agree with that. And it reminds me of a Jerry Cantrell quote. He's like, life is a tough gig, but thinking,
like Lanigan said, it's fighting off the dogs.
Yeah, always keeping the dogs off. And thinking about Layne, so he passed away April 5th, and it wasn't discovered that he had passed away until April 19th of 2002. And then the aftermath, I want to share a statement that Alice in Chains, that the band, had released upon the announcement of Layne's death. And they said, it's good to be with friends and family as we struggle to deal with this immense loss and to try to celebrate this immense life. We are looking for all the usual things: comfort, purpose, answers, something to hold on to, a way to let him go in peace. Mostly, we are feeling heartbroken over the death of our beautiful friend. He was a sweet man with a keen sense of humor and a deep sense of humanity. He was an amazing musician, an inspiration, and a comfort to so many. He made great music and gifted it to the world. We are proud to have known him, to be his friend, and to create music with him. For the past decade, Layne struggled greatly. We can only hope that he has at last found some peace. We love you, Layne, dearly, and we will miss you endlessly. And Ethan, I think the first time we had seen that quote was that special that Much Music TV in Canada ran shortly after. It must have been on April 20th or April 19th with George Stroumboulopoulos as the host. And they were kind of talking about Layne, and I believe they read that quote and a couple of different quotes, maybe one from Tom Morello and maybe one from Eddie Vedder, the Pearl Jam is the, from the whole group. But
it's such a heartbreaking, and just hearing you read it, it's so sad. It's
nobody
so
knew him
sad.
better than those guys,
That was family, that was friends talking. That was very genuine, and it really sucks.
Yeah, but it's really tough to look back on, and just thinking about Layne, kind of what we did for Kurt. Is there any particular performance or work that kind of sticks out for you?
Let's see. Like I said, I really enjoyed the Unplugged, but Jar of Flies as a whole is something I go back to a lot. I really enjoy the musicianship and his vocals on there. But I don't know. I find enjoyment. I feel like every time I listen to them, I kind of get something different. And I enjoy listening to the whole discography. And nothing nothing to speak on. I really enjoy watching and listening to Layne. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, Jar of Flies, but particularly Nutshell. I mean, just how poignant and heavy of a song that is. And he wrote that one, and I mean, we all know that song. We all know what it's about, and heavy stuff. But he was special. Kurt and Layne were both very special, and then also several years later, but Shawn Smith, who was a very, very experienced Seattle musician, who was in bands like Brad with Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam. He was in Satchel. He was in Pigeon Head. He passed away on April 3rd, 2019, at the age of 53. And just another incredibly talented musician. And Shawn was one of those guys that, for anybody from the Seattle music scene from, whenever Shawn started in the late 80s, early 90s until his death, they had just the best things to say about him. And he was also a very accomplished solo musician. So a little bit of an opportunity for a crossover. A lot of his music was featured in one of my favorite television shows, The Sopranos. And then one of their best episodes, and one of the most historic ones, it's an episode called Long-Term Parking, and two of his solo songs were featured in that. Leaving California and then Wrapped in My Memory. And Ethan, I think Wrapped in My Memory is one that we've both definitely posted before, is just pretty much him solo piano. And, just another great talent, and somebody that had such a way to create art and to create music and to use their words. He was really, really, really special. So April 5th is tough.
Yeah, that's someone that we should try and post a little bit more. I know whenever we do, people respond really well to it, and appreciate that. And that's something that we could probably do a little better job.
Yeah, to share his music.
There's a lot of, obviously there's endless amounts of music that we can share, but look forward to sharing them, these three, on the 5th of April. And
and we'll be interacting, throughout the whole day on the pages, and sharing things that are special to us, and we'll be interacting in the comments. But additionally, also on April 5th, the heavy day that it is, it's also the day that Mike McCready was born. Yeah, he was born April 5th, 1966. So he is turning a whole 55 years old today.
Happy birthday, Mike McCready.
Happy birthday to the great Mike McCready. And I just have to say, my favorite version of Mike McCready was 1992 when he rocked the mustache. I think he got rid of it very quickly, but I loved it. It was great. Mike's one of my favorite guitarists, obviously. Yeah. He's unbelievable. And
I remember, so Chris and I have been to two Pearl Jam shows together, one at Wrigley and one at Fenway. And I remember the first show we went to was at Fenway, and when we finished and we were driving home, and Chris asked me, he's like, or maybe it was a couple of days after, and I was like, so what did you think? What most impressed you about that live? And I was like, honestly, Mike McCready absolutely slayed it.
Yeah.
Like, he was on fire. The guy just killed it, and it just totally blew me away. I knew he was a good guitarist, but sometimes when you get to watch a guitarist in person and watch them, how they move and do stuff, like, he was just dialed in, and
so
just
different.
Both shows just absolutely crushed it. I gained so much respect for him, and it was such a beautiful sight. That's side note takeaway, like seeing Pearl Jam live in the past 5 years twice, just super dialed in. The musicianship was off the charts. I was really, really impressed. So McCready,
I completely agree.
Killing it.
Mike was unbelievable. Like, I was just about to say the exact same thing. Like, he's somebody you just got to see him live. You just got to see him play live, and just the way I know the first show we saw him play a incredible solo on Black, which just tore the doors off of every building in a 20-mile radius. And then
wasn't Bronson Arroyo?
Bronson Arroyo, yes.
Bronson Arroyo came out and Bronson played
acoustic guitar on Black. And
that was an incredible. That one might have been the best song of the night.
Mike he made that performance, and I know. One of the songs that had always been at the top of my charts in terms of what I want to see Pearl Jam play live was Yellow Ledbetter. and he played that to close. They played that to close the Wrigley show that we went to in 2018. And it's funny because Mike normally plays that song on a Fender Stratocaster. He has a 59 Strat that he usually plays it on, and they had played "Rockin' in the Free World," and he was playing it on a Les Paul. And then, so I assumed that I was like, okay, like he's not going to switch his guitars. And they normally will end sometimes with "Rockin' in the Free World." So I was like, oh, like, guess we'll have to wait again for Ledbetter. But then there was like a little exchange there between like Ed and the guys. And then Mike stepped up to the front of the stage and he started playing, those first couple of licks to Ledbetter and on the Les Paul, which I don't think I'd seen video of him playing Ledbetter on a Les Paul before. And it was awesome. It was really cool. It was totally worth it. But yeah, Mike is just a incredible musician, and an activist of sorts, and he's actually, I don't know if you know this, but he's got Crohn's disease, and he does a lot with different Crohn's disease nonprofits to raise awareness and to raise funds. And it seems like an overall really great guy, and not without his struggles as well. In the 90s and the early 2000s, he'd struggled with different forms of substance abuse, but he seems to be doing strong these days, and I'm excited, for the next time, and perhaps 2022, that we might be able to go see Mike live again. That would be really cool.
Oh yeah, I cannot wait for the day that we get to return to a Pearl Jam show. It's gonna be a great time.
Absolutely, and perhaps maybe see some of you all, the listeners. We could see you there, and we get together and share some stories in person, just as we do on this page. But yeah, April 5th is a heavy day. Talk about 4 guys right here, 3 of them unfortunately who aren't with us, but just the legacies that they all have, and how in little ways they're all intertwined geographically, in terms of different years, sometimes even in terms of different projects, with Mike and Layne being in Mad Season together, and just creating music in the same town, all 4 of them for a number of years. And just some really, really talented artists and people that provided us and still provide us with a lot of value. It's really special, and I'm certainly thankful that they all chose to create in the way that they did, and share it with us. I think everybody listening, and myself and you, I think we're definitely better for them having made that choice. Yeah,
I think a great way to memorialize them is take time to listen to your favorite Nirvana song, favorite Alice in Chains song, best Brad song you can get.
Play some Brad, play some Satchel,
and just listen to them intently and appreciate their music. And I think that that will mean a lot to them. I think we'll send our good wishes, and they'll feel that, and we can all kind of celebrate and be together on that on this day, and I think that will be a beautiful thing. So
I agree. So thanks for listening today. We'll be very active on the pages later today. So we'd love to have some conversations with you guys about what these artists mean to you, maybe some of your favorite performances, and we'll continue to honor them and to memorialize them in the way that we can. But thanks for listening to this special episode of the Grunge Bible Podcast. And until next time. And we'll be back regular scheduled after this one, but back on Friday to come on, and back on Friday. But thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking about these guys. Absolutely. Thanks again, everybody. Talk to you soon. All right.